Hunter has some really cool
I
stuff.
want to see, and my goal today is to see how many of it I can put in these.
That's not going to happen. Alright, so without further ado, here's Ali Hunter. I'll let him introduce himself.
Well, how's everybody doing so far today?
Good.
Has anybody here actually built any Windows 10 apps and put them in the store yet?
No,
Anybody?
not yet.
Of course, you had it. Yes. Anybody else? Come on, anybody? No? Has anybody been playing around with the dev tools yet? Has anybody downloaded and installed more than one version of Visual Studio 2015? Me too. Yeah, it's been some fun. So, my name's Ali Hunter. I know that I recognize a few of you here. How many people here have heard me talk to any of these before? Okay, awesome. Cool, so you guys all know not to expect much. Good. For the rest of you, I am a app developer. That's all I do. Every day, all day. If I'm not sleeping, I'm usually writing an app. Or I'm on my way to one of these things. So, has anybody got any questions about what they've started with already today? Like anything that's sort of been troubling them or anything that they want to touch on before we move on to any new stuff? Yes, no? No? Okay. So we're going to start talking about live tiles, push notifications, and the Action Center. One of the big things that you have as an advantage with Windows that you don't have on the other platforms is some excellent tools to help you re-engage the users. Now, over 90% of apps on all platforms get installed by the user, used once, and then forgotten. Okay. How many people have got at least one or two apps on their phone they haven't touched in the last 30 days? The average person has 45 apps on their phone that they haven't used in the last 30 days. The average person has 45 unused apps. So, this is about making sure people come back into your apps. How many people here are planning an app, have got an app idea that they want to get into the store? Okay. How many of those app ideas do they want to have make money? Guess what? Those app ideas don't make money if they're not opened. Okay, so this is all about re-engagement. This is all about giving the users some extra information, giving the users that extra reason to come back into your app and re-engaging and getting them, all excited. Anybody here ever seen an app get updated and then go, oh, I haven't touched that app in forever, and they go in and start playing it again? Yeah, so that's one way of re-engagement. Windows gives you the opportunity to do that on a much more regular basis, okay? Because has anybody here got a Windows phone? Cool. Okay, so anybody have an app on their screen they haven't looked at in a while, and then they see something cool on the tile, and they go in and they pop in and play around in the app for about 10 or 15 minutes? Yeah, it happens. And so that's what these tiles and push notifications are for. Now, also, there are several different tools. The Action Center is the newest thing in Windows 10. It's sort of an extension and a come along in the convergence from Windows Phone. So Windows Phone in 8.1 had the Action Center that you could pull down from the top of the screen. Windows 8.1 didn't really have an Action Center. Toast notifications popped up and they went away. That's a big loss for a developer because how many people have had something pop up on their screen and then go, what the hell was that? And they missed it. And then got really frustrated because they couldn't go find it. I found that was probably the worst thing on Windows for me was that I always saw the push notifications just as they started to slide back into the UI. Oops. That's awesome. First raising. Oh, that's why. Sorry, I have two presentations over here, and they're both named almost the exact same thing.
We hope you're enjoying your visit to Central Library today.
I was.
Today's free flick is Fast and Furious, Furious 7. It is rated PG, and the movie begins at 2 p.m.
I gotta go now.
PG for pretty great, eh?
New Christie digital projection. Thanks, and have a great great day.
Libraries have changed. I was pretty sure they weren't going to let's restart this. Hold on for a second, because apparently this is a new version of Office that doesn't like me. There we go. And then it goes, oh, resume the slideshow? I'm like, yeah. And then I click the mouse again. So. Finally! Oh my god. Okay, so we're going to go over some very, very basics. We're also going to discuss tile templates and how they've changed or haven't changed. We're going to talk about something new, which is the adaptive templates. It's a new feature that gives you the ability to push the data quickly, a little easier, and get the tiles and themselves to accept more data based on the size that they're allotted by whatever device they're showing on. We're going to talk about toast, and if you're smelling toast, let me know. You're having a seizure. We're talking about interactive toast. It's a new feature that's available that allows you to get a little bit more interaction with the user and have different things happen either with or without starting your whole application up. So it can offer some really great new use cases. Talk about push notifications and the action center. I'm going to probably go through this a lot faster than they want me to. There's 55 slides here. I think this should really be about 6. How many people get bored to death of slides? Yeah, me too. So if you have any questions, if something comes to your mind and you want to ask it, okay? Don't wait for me to finish. I'd rather have you interrupt me. The whole idea of this day is for you guys to get the information you need. I'd much rather have you ask me a question and us get that handled than have you possibly forget it afterwards. So the basics. How many people have done here anything with tiles? Yeah. In apps? No. How many people, this is your first app, you're right? Okay, so we've got a couple of first timers here. Welcome. Tiles are made up of 3 main levels, okay? You have the base level, which is the background color or image. Actually, sorry, the background color. And then, which is the plate. You've got the app logo, okay? Actually, I think there's 5 levels, if I'm not mistaken. So the plate is your background color, your base color. It's either transparent, or the system color, or a color that you've chosen. You get to change that in the app manifest, okay? Where you set your tile paths, and we'll go over that in a couple of minutes. The app logo is usually a small image that will, give the user an idea of what that app or that tile is for. For example, the app logo may not always be the same throughout your app. You could have what's called a secondary tile. You could have several secondary tiles, which I know sounds kind of illogical, but for example, let's say you have a sports app and you allow the user to pin an individual tile for individual teams to have the team stats. So that individual tile could have the team's logo as the logo instead of having your app logo. Or ideally what you do is you have your app logo with the team logo in some way so that you could convey that this is your brand. Because remember, a lot of this is about branding, about keeping the user aware of your app, your style, your brand, the features that you're offering, right? So a lot of what goes along with making money with apps is the branding and the understanding that you're not just building an app if you're trying to make money with it, you're building a brand and a product. Okay, so you try and keep that in mind. Then you've got the short name. A lot of times this ends up being blank. You can just leave this empty, but you keep a short name in there and you only keep it a few characters, as short as is reasonable. I think you get 13 characters there, if I'm not mistaken, that you can use. So trying to make that as short as possible. In a lot of cases, I try to make sure that my tile logo itself speaks enough that I don't have to put a name down there. Because a lot of times what people like is the transparent logos or transparent tiles so they can see their background picture behind it. And when you put text on just a plain glyph like that, it ends up looking a lot messier in that overall. And you'll find that users will be less likely to keep it as one of their primary front-running tiles, especially on a phone device. So, as you can see, you've got the layers here. You've got these three main layers. So you got the short name, the app, logo, and the plate. So those are the three main layers of the tile.
Is that short name static?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Well, static in what way?
So you want to have like a tile on your desktop, you want to send messages, maybe just.
Well, so realistically, your application can update tile information. So you could theoretically have it say something. I'm not sure if you can change the short name in the background task. So as far as I know, it is static. But I have designed templates, and we'll talk about more of an adaptive template or a custom template in a few minutes. That what I tend to do is make a custom template that allows me to put different things in parts of the screen. So, okay, so we've got the base state, and we've got a semi-live state. So a semi-live state means that we've added one more layer, and that would be the badge layer, or usually, in most cases, is a number that tells you. In this case, you've got 400 emails. You could be, it's usually something to say, hey, this is how many things need your attention in this app. And that's usually the most common case for it. And then you have the live state. This is where you get the 5 layers. This is where you get the 5th layer. Then you get the content layer. So this is a horribly designed tile. That has the content drooling off the side, which you will see in surprising number of apps. I think it's horrible form, and if you can in any way try and make sure that your app is not doing that, because it does just make your app look sloppy. But anyway, so you'll notice that we still have the plate at the bottom, we still have the short name, we still have the badge, the app icon, the short name, but the content is now interjected between the plate and the short name. So this is the only one where it's not just another layer on top, it's a layer interjected. Okay? And so that will allow you to use one of the many different templates to format and present that content. Any questions so far? So the primary tile, can anybody see that? That's horrible, isn't it? Okay, hold on for a second. Let's see. Okay, so when we're looking at our primary tile, we format that and we assign that in the app manifest of the application. Now the app manifest, I'm sure how many people have explored the app manifest of their project so far. Yeah. So for you, those of you that haven't, every time you create a new Windows project, you're going to get a package app.appx manifest. That'll happen if you're making a store app, a Windows Phone app, an Xbox app, or a Universal Windows Platform app. You'll get that package.appx manifest. Now, you'll notice here that this particular one only has one tile laid out, right? This is called the 200 scale. So this is scale 100, which means the 100% scale. Scale 200, if you're only going to put one size of graphic in there. Put it in for the scale 200. The system is designed to properly scale it up and down for you without creating, all sorts of weird edges and real big mess. So, you'll notice here that you have the ability to assign a short name. You also can tell it when and where to show the name. So, in some cases, I will show the name on the wide tile or the large tile, in case as it may be, but not in the square 150 by 150, which is called the medium tile. So, there are several different sizes that are available. You can issue or post images for each one of these sizes if you like, and in most cases it's probably a good idea to start out though. If you're going to put just one graphic in, again, put it in for scale 200. That would be the size that you would have to put it in for. Now you'll also have the ability to assign images for things like the badge logo. And again there, you've got the scale 200 image, and this is your badge logo. Now a badge logo is required if you're going to have toast notifications or if you're going to have lock screen badging. So that's where that falls into place. The badge logo sounds a little strange because we saw on the tile where it said badge, and badge is just a number, right? So it can be a little confusing. Just remember that that's usually used for toast notifications. Who's seen a toast notification pop up with a little icon in the corner and then it's got its text and its blurb and whatever? That's where that comes up. Then you also assign your splash screen here as well. Again, default scale 200 is required as a minimum. Ways you can update tiles. You have your primary tile. Your primary tile is both the tile that's put in the app list when you go all apps, or on the second screen in the Windows Phone when you see the list of all of the apps. That's your first tile. That is the, I think it's 76 by 76 icon if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 106 by 106. The main tile, your primary tile, is the one that gets pinned to the start screen, either on the phone or in the start menu in Windows, or the start screen in Windows in tablet mode. That is the user's choice. You do not get to dictate that that's where that shows up. You do build for it, but the plan is that they're going to want to pin your application because your application is important enough to know that they want access to it readily. The best way of doing that is making sure that you're offering them really great information in that primary tile, right? So by updating it, making it a live tile. So there's different ways that you can make a tile live or semi-live, and one of them is by schedule, okay? So setting up a template and updating the time with a scheduled tile notification. So that allows you in the application to set a time and basically a URL where the application will go to get the next version of the tile. That's great if you have a central system. Perhaps you're doing something on several different platforms, or something from head office, or something from your own cloud service, or whatever you're doing, that allows you to update it on the server side and have the clients go and get the tiles to update them. So what they'll do is on the scheduled time, they will reload the tile with the URI that you have specified in the manifest. So a periodic is similar. Where it will do it every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, every 6 hours, 12 hours, or 24 hours. 30 minutes is the minimum. The schedule, you can schedule a date and time, you can schedule a little more finely than you can with the periodic. Periodic is very similar to the periodic background task that we originally had in the first Windows Phone, where you could get something to run every 30 minutes or, longer. And then local is where you update it from a foreground or background task in the app. This is the one that I tend to find in a lot of cases I end up using in a number of my apps, is creating a background task that will then get the information it needs, format the way I want it, and inject it into a new layout of a tile. And I find that tends to work fairly well, especially in cases where I don't want to pay for background service or I don't have access to another background service. So it does allow you to completely do it. Anybody here using Tartan? I know there's a couple people that are using Tartan. That does all of the tiles locally. So what it does is I don't have access to their push notification services. So what I do is I have a background task that fires every 11 to 15 minutes, and it fires off, grabs the information it needs, formats the tile, and creates a new tile. So that gives you the ability to do quite a robust tile in a very, very local setting and have as much full control over it as you can. And then, as I mentioned there, push notification. So using a push services to either update the full tile or update the badge value on the tile. So you can actually have a push notification service that just says 5 or 3 or 2 or whatever the unread count is or the action required count is. And it's a very, very thin service that ends up being something that's very cost effective both to the user and to the developer. But it does offer a very minimal amount of information to the user and can sometimes be less engaging than you want. You have to look at what the use case is. And then obviously the push notification services to create a new tile.
Excuse me,
Yes?
if you have a multilingual application, where does that notification of the language come from?
So the question was, if you have a multilingual application, where does that language information come for the tile? So that is entirely on you. So what happens is, in the case of a background task or whatever, you would have to do the same culture info and using those features in it that you would use in your application normally. In the case of a background task, you would have to be able to get the information on the culture and then fire the task information directly back in the language. It doesn't change the language for you. So in your case, a service that would allow you to do push would probably require, at some point when you're signing up for the service, for it to fire off something to the server saying, I'm French or I'm German or whatever. And then you could then call on that in your background service, in your off-site service. So it would then push the right data.
Session state variable or something like that.
Yeah. So that's a little bit more of a complicated component. It's definitely not the first grade one. So if we're looking, So if we're looking at updating a tile badge, okay, we've got to build the badge and then we update the elements, right? So in the badge manager, basically all of these formats are not XAML. They are XML, straight XML. And they're very, very thin XML that allows you to utilize the templates based on a couple of different element calls. And so you do update the element by getting the element of the template for that particular tile, and that element will be called badge.
What you're saying is Microsoft spent years shoving XAML down our throats just to abandon it entirely?
No, not at all. Just in the tiles.
Just in the important part.
No, it's not. So what it is the main point of using XML there is XML's thinner than XAML, not as thin as JSON, right? It doesn't require the same amount of weight to reinterpret as JSON does, but it doesn't require the same weight to render as XAML does because it's being run through a very, very specific function that just renders these tiles.
Okay.
And so there's only a certain number of things that it looks for. And so in using the XML for this, it allows them to create thin templates that allow them to get a lot more bang for the buck in this particular scenario. So in no way is it them abandoning XAML. I originally asked pretty close to the same question of people at Microsoft, and they explained it to me. They're like, you know, it actually does make sense because XML is a little thinner than XAML, right? So anyway, so you basically would get the badge number, right? Or the type. You get the template content based on the type. Then you go in and get the badge field out of the template, and then you would set the attribute for that particular element, or the XML element, to whatever the number is or value that you want it to be. I've tried throwing letters in there. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like the badge that says D. And then set into lock screen. You have the ability to also update the lock screen for the particular badge. Anyways, is there any questions about this? It's not really super complicated code, but it's a little different than what you're doing on most of them. Well, that's awesome. Okay, there we go. Oops. Okay, so now secondary tile. I touched on creating a secondary tile a few minutes ago, where I was talking about the scenario where you have a sports team and people may want to pin individual tiles. So in Tartan, I'm working on an update that will allow you to pin individual teams to your start screen or to your desktop, and then you can go and open just that team and not anything else. To create a secondary tile, basically what you're creating is a deep link into your application. So it's a great way to allow the user to say, hey, I don't want to go through the main screen and then navigate to here and go over to here or find something in a list. I just want to open that piece out of the list and open it in the detail page or whatever UI scenario that you've got planned. So in creating a secondary tile, you're going to have to give it a tile ID. Now, the tile ID has to be unique. I know that this trips up a lot of people the first time they do it, is they create a secondary tile that has one name and they're like, well, why can't I put a tile out for every team? I'm like, well, because it just keeps changing the one tile. That's because if you give it an ID, the ID needs to be unique within the application scope. Okay, so in this case, it's second details tile, but in the case of sports teams, you might want to name it by the city or something. Detroit, Chicago, Boston. In here, it will tell you if it's pinned. Now this is a great way to make sure that in a secondary or a background task, you're not wasting resources that could be better used in something else. One of the things you really want to try to be conscious of, especially in phone applications, is battery life. Okay, the user's experience is very, very important in the health of the device. Whether it's on a tablet, a laptop, or a phone, is very important. If you're running background tasks that are doing lots of things they don't need to do, you're wasting the user's battery. Just think about how much you like it when people waste your battery, right? Anybody here ever install an app because it just seemed to suck the battery life out of their device? We all have, right? So because a lot of developers don't think of that. So, first thing you want to do is you want to find out if the tile has been pinned, okay? So if it exists already in that tile ID, then you know it's been pinned. You know it's been created and exists. You also then have an interesting look into how the people are using your application. I've used that first 2 lines of code in an application in a completely different context to find out if they're pinning things. to find out how often they use it, to find out that they are using it, they are using extra features. So if it hasn't been pinned, you don't have to do anything. In this case, if it isn't pinned, you're going to create a new secondary tile. If you're doing it in a background task, you'd be looking to see if it wasn't pinned, you wouldn't do anything because there's no reason to update that secondary tile, right? In this scenario, we're looking to create one. So we'll be checking to make sure that it doesn't already exist because then we know that we should create it. So in here, you create a new secondary tile, you give it a name, you give it the arguments, and then it will create the tile. You can actually get a success or fail on the creation of the tile, whether the tile properly gets pinned. I have not seen very many scenarios where they fail, but it's still good to check. Because you can at least give user feedback if for some reason it's not allowing it to pin. So, any questions so far? I feel like I'm just rambling on. You know, this is fairly dry. Okay, good. Okay, so tile templates. Anybody that's played with the tile templates over the different versions of Windows and Windows Phone knows that there were over 120 different tile templates. And they just kept adding more and more and more. And it seemed that every time they brought a new version, there was 20 or 30 new tile templates that no one could figure out who the hell was asking them for. Because they were very, very slight variations of the exact same tile. So, what they did was, they took all the tiles from Windows Phone, and all the tiles from Windows, and they jammed them all together. So they now have access to all of the different tiles. Now there are 88 main tile templates. But there are also, all of the old ones will still work. So the ones that are specifically Windows Universal Application Project, there's 88 of those. But all of the old ones will still work for backwards compatibility because
Do those 88 include the interactive tiles that we're supposed to be getting?
No. No, they do not.
Because I mean, that's going to be another, what, 200 templates?
Well, no. So what'll happen is the templates will be, and surprisingly won't go up by that many because what'll happen is it will be template components but interactive jammed in the middle of it.
Sorry.
That was awesome. You could have let that whole thing play. We would have danced. So, as you can see, there are some very some interesting scenarios and interesting layouts. You'll notice that, much to my chagrin, you still can't put gigantic tiles on your phone. I really want gigantic tiles on my phone. But on the phone, you'll have this size tile, this size tile, and this size tile. Okay, you'll have a number of different templates that will allow you to lay those out. On Windows, you have this size tile, this size tile, this size tile, this size tile, and this size tile. These tiles, though, have you seen any of these yet, Andre? Have you seen any of these tiles yet?
Yeah, I'm surprised to see this tile.
These ones? Yeah, I haven't seen these ones yet.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's still a good song. So these are basic app tile templates. As you can see, you've got your logo, your name, your badge numbers, different scenarios and different layouts in here. You have some more complicated ones where you'll have content title and content body, and then content title and content body there. And then you'll have your logo, your badge, and your name. Those are fairly complicated tiles and complex tiles. They're still ugly.
I think the stall tiles.
What?
I think the stall tiles are for Xbox.
These ones I think are for Xbox, yes. That's what I'm saying. I haven't seen them anywhere else. They exist though, if you look up the templates, they exist. I just haven't ever gotten them working for anything. So these tiles also scale across devices. Okay, and this is part of the adaptive layout that we were talking about, where you'll notice that this tile is much larger and wider than this is. This one's actually wider than this one is. These are the... I got them all mixed up because they used to have them so it's a phone and then Windows and then Xbox, but they're all sort of mashed. Anyways, this is basically a small subset of the available tile templates. Like I said, legacy tiles, legacy templates. If a template meets your needs, go ahead and use it. Previous templates remain. Phone and Windows templates have emerged. There are over 80 templates available. Yeah, there's 88 base ones. And then there's probably another 30 some odd that are available that are on the edge of them. Please don't say more templates.
We need more. We need the interactive.
This, I hate marketing slide decks. They're so horrible. High five! So this is an adaptive tile, okay? So what we mean by an adaptive tile is that the tile, when it renders, will take into account the size of space that it has to render out. Okay, so if you're rendering this tile here, and this is one of the things that I find very frustrating, they call it adaptive. It's really running off the edge in some cases. But what it does do is the font sizes and the layouts change slightly based on the available space, so that the UI experience is consistent, so that the title looks like a title everywhere. The content looks like content everywhere. You still are going to, as you can see, work to make sure that you're not running text off the edge of it. What I do with one of my later apps that I can show you later on is that I worked really hard to find out how wide the tile would be and approximately how many characters, and then I erred on the side of smaller, and I put an ellipse at the end, and I created map code that would literally say, you can have this much space, this is the maximum number of characters you can have, cut it off with the word and put ... It ends up making for a much nicer tile and a much cleaner UI on the screen. And how many people would kind of find that annoying on their main screen? That would suck, right? It really looks amateur. And so you want to try and avoid that. So please think about that. Now, as you can see, in an adaptive tile, this is basic XML. And you're going to have very, very little bit of actual coding in here. And you'll have some words that will allow you to, see what the layout is going to propose for that particular piece. So the subtitle is this. So that's the header or the subtitle of it. And then the subtle is the smaller, lighter font that allows you to put a little bit of detail in there without standing out so strong against other elements.
Question on that.
Yes.
These tiles there, I mean, obviously we can update them dynamically in the background task, say a target message does it. That said though, how long can that background task run for without the tile being activated in? Because if I were to travel to the US for work, I'm not going to be using data for 7 days. Is the tile going to time out where it won't update anymore until after I launch the app manually again? I know it used to be around 7 days.
Yeah, so it used to be 2 weeks.
Okay.
It used to be 2 weeks. And I think it's longer. I don't think it's changed. You don't think it's changed? I think it's longer, but I'll check. Do me a favor, just ping me and I'll look into that for you.
Alright.
Okay? I think I don't remember them saying something specifically about it, but I thought I remembered a side conversation about background and things like that where they said that it was long.
Next version.
What?
Maybe for next version.
Of course, yeah, who knows? I don't even know what version this is. Okay, so as you can see here, you have different things that are very, very telling in the design of this. So we have a medium tile. That means it's going to be the square tile, right? Whereas on the different UIs, that square tile is much different overall size dimensions. The subtitle gives you your heading. The group and subgroup allows you to have more than one of these sections if the tile allows. So in this case, this is a horrible example because for that last tile, it should have a second subgroup that says the same thing, and it doesn't. But that's what would happen: is you'd have group, you'd have subgroup, you'd have another subgroup set down here that would have this, and that's what would give you this tile. So none of this would give you this tile. Why? So here's an interesting thing. So here's where you can clean up some of the UI because certain elements in it will allow you to wrap. Okay? And that means that the text does not trail off the end like we saw in the other one. Certain elements, not every element in the tile template. So when you're looking at the tile templates, you do have to be aware of them. Certain tile templates will allow you to wrap, other ones will require, like I said, the ability to have something to cut off the text and create that ellipse. Now, if you're sending the information from the server side, that's a good idea to do it on the server side and cut it down and put an ellipse on it because you're sending less data back. It travels more quickly, renders more quickly, and it costs everybody less money. When you're sending data out of Azure, that's where your big cost is. You can push data into Azure all day long. I have an app that I made for the summit that we just had in Seattle, and everybody that had it, their phone pinged every 15 minutes and told just a GUID, so identify it as a unique device, and then the location, down to atomic level. So I was keeping track of people to like half an hour, which is pretty funny. And that happened for hundreds of devices every 15 minutes. And then when you went and looked at the map, it would show you where clumps of people were grouping. And so that even though I was sending down really, really long doubles to the server, when I sent it back, I sent back the lat and the long to like 100 square meters or 10 square meters and a number. So I was sending back very little data, which is the only reason that that particular app didn't cost me anything really. Like it cost almost nothing. Because people only got that once when they opened up the app. It didn't matter how much data I pump into Azure until that data starts to eat lots of space. Once it starts to eat lots of space, then you end up at the storage costs, but storage costs are much less than the data transfer back to the device cost. So anywhere when you're creating something, especially for tiles and things like that, think about how much data you're sending back. Okay, because that will be where your big cost is. And it's also the big cost for the user is the data coming down to the phone because you're using the data transfers. Now, as you can see, I can actually send a template, or I can have a template. So I can have this template or send this whole template if I want to, that contains information that's relative to the application's architecture. Right? So I can use references to images that are in the assets folder on the device so that it will render them out. So, and that ends up being a great option if you're trying to keep the cost down, again, for data transferring, because if you're sending images out of your service, again, that's another cost. So, here's a small tile. So this would be the smallest tile on the screen, those little wee ones that make up for a wide tile, or a medium tile, rather. Or I think it's six of a wide. So here's a medium tile, and it can contain a little bit more information, where you can set a caption style, and it will show the text accordingly. Again, if you're doing a medium tile, I don't care what the device is. Don't send the whole word Wednesday. It's always going to look horrible. Unless it's just saying Wednesday. Because that will take up most of the tiles width. I love that they make these tiles with such horrible UI examples. They're fantastic. It's like, hey, this is what you can do. It. Don't ever do it like that. And here's the wide tile. Wide tile is sort of what I consider the big get, or the big, it's what you're aiming for on their phone. You want them to like the information you're showing so much, and you're giving them so much good information that they want that big chunk of their screen for you. Because if you have that big chunk of the screen, especially in the start menu, all of a sudden, that space for live tiles got really valuable, especially when you consider most people are going to have their calendar taking up probably a half of one of those rows, and their mail taking up the other half of one of those rows. Being able to present the right kind of data in the right layout to get someone to want to put a wide tile on their device is literally what you're aiming for, okay? So when you make your wide tile, make sure that you're designing it well, that you're thinking about the information that goes in there, you're making sure that it's really valuable, that they get a lot of bang for the buck, because they're giving away valuable real estate on the device. So again, we're seeing more of the information that we saw there, where you can see the name. Now here's where I think you asked me whether you can change that name. So that's essentially what that's doing there, is that display name is this. Yeah, sorry. And then obviously your tile, your badge number, and then you've got the caption. You've got an inline, so this is an interesting scenario where you have the ability to do in this template an image placement inline, which means that it puts it in the layout with the text itself, which can create a really nice effect. Oh yeah, and then this is a really good property to be aware of too in templates. Is if you have a wrap, have it, and it has the hint max lines 3. Be aware that that's how much data you're sending out. Making sure that your data properly either closes the data loop there, or uses the ellipses to clean it off. Now here's a large tile. Now this is sort of the new big bear. Having these on a Windows device is, again, the goal. You want to be displaying enough information that people are really interested in the information that you're sending. You're going to want to make sure that tiles like these, wide tiles, large tiles, are updating reasonably frequently. You do not want to have one of those tiles that changes once a day. Because how many people would leave that much space on their device to an app that changed that once a day? Unless, of course, it was like forest fires, and you didn't want any forest fires.
Fire forecaster.
But even then, you want to make sure that it was more frequently telling you. Even if you don't have new data to show, if you've got a tile with that much space, maybe perhaps think about showing an updated tile or information that lets the user know that things are changing, right? Or that there has been more information done, or it has been updated. It's not just not working. So here we have the tile large, and we have the image placement inline, I thought they were going to talk about this. You also have a hint weight 33. Okay? That allows you to slightly massage the boldness in the 33. It's not actually. My apologies. I have to look and see what that is again. I don't remember. Was it? I'll have to look and see. It's either has to do with size. I'm not 100% sure. Toast. Any questions? Part of nutritious breakfast, great way to get users to go back into your application. Toast is very, very useful. You've got to be careful when you're creating application toast with toast that very confusing. Justin, you're confused?
No, I was doing coding.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, that's fine. I just look over like, oh my god, I'm losing them!
Sorry, I should have said it more clearer.
No, that's fine. Hey, listen, you know what? Why do I keep getting this error?
That's a good one.
Who's
Sure.
You getting an error?
I'm trying to create the app. It's the template is messed up.
Alright.
Yeah, I was gonna do it on the lap. I'm gonna go to the lap. I was gonna go back.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. I'm gonna end up dreaming about titles tonight. As long as they're not nightmares. Okay, so, that was nice. Nice. Is that you? That's something you would do. Oh, that's you? That was you? Nice. Thanks. Okay, so, has anybody had an application that keeps popping up messages all the time and they found it really annoying and they got rid of it? That's what you want to avoid, okay? The idea with doing these notifications and these tiles is to re-engage the user, not piss them off and lose them as a customer, okay? So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to walk that line between giving the right amount of information and knowing when to stop when the information flow is getting too high. Because how many people feel a little overloaded with the amount of information coming at them every day, right? Be aware of that. If you think you guys are overwhelmed, imagine what my 7-year-old mother feels.
7-year-old mother.
My mom's 70.
Oh, 70. I thought 7.
7, yeah, my 7-year-old mother. Because my last name's Button. No, think about how overwhelmed people can get with all the emails and all the pop-ups and everything else. With apps, in a lot of cases, you're starting to see the new paradigm that was the same as the old webs, where every website caused like 9 pop-ups and people got exhausted and exasperated and created blockers. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a blocker app to block pop-ups and toast in Android. And you know, given the right amount of pressure, that'll end up getting created here too. You know, itself, good idea for now.
They were just allowed in the Apple store.
What?
Ad blockers, they were just put up in the Apple store.
I know. Another reason why I won't write any more Apple apps. So, toasts are quick glances of information. In most cases, 6 lines of text in a pop-up that you're probably not really going to even notice because you're in the middle of doing something else until it's almost on its way off the screen is a little much, right? Think about how much information you need to get out, right? And how much you would need to get the user back into your application. And remember the concept of less is more. Okay? Just because you can put 6 lines there does not mean you need to put 6 lines there. Okay? I think we spend an awful lot of time doing things just because we can. That's a horrible mock-up. Now, one of the great things is that now with the new notification centers in Windows, that these toasts don't mostly disappear. Although, how many people have gotten already tired of clearing toast notifications off the pop off the notification center in Windows? I get about 600 a day. I've started turning off applications notifications because I have email and all sorts of other things, and it's ridiculous. So be aware of that. Be aware that people, most people, what will happen is they will leave them there until they just get fed up with all of them, and then stop push notifications altogether, and everybody will suffer. So don't contribute to yourself to it, because at the very least you'll suffer. At the very worst, we'll all suffer. But that being said, toasts are incredibly useful ways of re-engaging the user, because you can create little pieces of information that can entice the user to go in and check something out and finish the rest of the story, the use story. For example, I have an application that pops up a toast notification 15 minutes before your favorite shows are going to start. So you can click the toast notification and go into the app and see the synopsis from that night's story. Great way to re-engage the user, and it just literally says the name of the app, the name of the show, and what time it goes, from what time to what time. That's it. So quick, easy, and can be very engaging. In some cases, though, you're going to want a little bit more information. Let's say it's a tech news story that you want to get just the right amount of the teaser out there with ... So they click in, you go back in and read. Now, with toast notifications, there are two main types now. Now we have the glance, right, which is just getting information from your apps, and if the toast is done to enable it, clicking and going through a deep link directly into whatever that toast notification is centered and focused on. The other one is the act notifications, the ones that will come up and say, hey, I need your attention and you have to do something right now. Okay? The most common one that most people will be aware of is the calendar toast that pops out and goes, you have a meeting in 15 minutes. Snooze for 5 minutes, dismiss, whatever, right? That is a toast notification. That is an action toast or an act toast.
What happens if there's more than one toast happening at the same time?
Oh, it can be a whole bloody mess. I've seen toasts go over top of each other, have you not? No. They get better, yes.
I thought you couldn't have two toasts on top of each other because...
No, I mean like one coming out just as the other one's going in, so it ends up being confusing which one's which. You can't have two action toasts on top of the
How
other.
long do they stay out for usually?
Depending on the action, I think the action toast, if they're system toasts, they can stay out until you act on them. Up to a certain dismiss, I don't know what the dismiss time is. The other ones, I am not 100% sure what the exact rate. The standard toast, I think, is 30 seconds or 20 seconds on it, maybe? I'm not sure. It's a good question, though. You know what? I've done probably 20 talks on toast notifications. Nobody's ever asked me that. So, toast templates. If a template meets your needs, go ahead and use it. All the previous templates remain for toast. There are some new ones, the adaptive templates. It's the same syntax that they're using in tiles. So once you know the syntax for the tile templates, that's the same syntax. So things like the caption text and the subheaders and the subtle denoters are all the same. Same thing with wrap. Now, as with the tiles, the phone and the Windows templates have merged, so there's more than there were on either of those together. In a lot of cases, there were vast similarities there. So, you can set a template to and time with the scheduled toast notification. For example, I have a class that I use that allows me to generate and schedule a toast with one line of code. So I can literally say, here's the text I want, here's the header I want, this is what I want it, go. And if you're going to do this, I highly recommend you do something like that, because you'll find it so much more useful than trying to write out the massive piles of read this XML and apply this here and do that there. How many people are finding they're copying and pasting a lot of code between applications because they're doing the same thing over and over again? Stop it. Make a library. I'm serious. It's the only way I'm able to do the number of apps that I do, and the only way I'm able to maintain them all. Is basically anything I do in an app now that I could even conceive of ever using again goes into a central library, and I write it dynamically and very agnostically so that I can reuse it as much as possible. And I can't stress that enough. If you're going to get into this, it makes your code much more manageable, it makes it much more supportable, and it makes it much faster for you to write applications. I can write applications in hours instead of days. So, can't stress that enough. So the scheduled toast is very simple. You can do that either from within your application or within a background task. For example, in Tartan, I have it set up to generate toast notifications for the application, the background task, so that it can give you toasts about whether you've been mentioned on a team or whatever else, and it sets it up so that they will come out a few seconds after each other, so that they don't all try to come out around the same time and block each other up. You can also schedule toast notifications far in advance, but you have to be aware that each application can only have a list of 256 toast notifications in the list. That sounds like a lot, but trust me, it really isn't. So for example, in Watchbox, one of my biggest problems that I have is that users that are watching tracking a lot of TV shows, I can't go too far in advance and reschedule their toast notifications because they'll run out of them very soon. And they'll add a new show and then whoops, they can't get toast notifications about it and they get really upset. So be aware of that limitation and be aware of how it affects. And I don't think it's been, I know that it was that way in 8.1, I don't think it was changed in 10 because it's a certain amount of time and resource needed to be able to have that many notifications scheduled in the system. And if you think of the number of applications you can have on a phone, I don't think that they have a lot of leeway to make that much bigger on devices, right? So, local is, you can actually schedule, them locally. It's very confusing because doing the scheduled toast notifications and also doing a local immediate push notification is sort of like your application can say, hey, in the background task, I found this, or this story came up, or whatever else. As soon as your background task runs, it can push a toast notification to run immediately so that the user goes, hey, wow, we just got this latest piece of information. So as soon as you've gotten it, you can send out the toast notification right away. Normally what I end up doing is I don't push immediate toast notifications out. I schedule it for a few seconds after whatever I'm doing has run. But that's just what I found works for me. It allows me to also keep the class smaller that I'm using and keep it all sorted together. Push notification services can send out the data for toast notifications so that when your device receives it from the push notification service, it will generate the toast. So you send it the right pieces of information, it will generate the toast and push it out to the user. So, sending toast. Again, it's very similar to the templating of a tile. It's based on the same syntax. It's based on the same general concept. The templates are just different. They're long, wide, narrow, lower amounts of information on them, or less information on them than there is in the tile. In most cases, less space to display the information, especially on a phone. On a Windows device, you'll have much more space, and on an Xbox, you'll have more space as well. Any questions about this?
I do have one question.
Yep.
An end user must be able to turn off notifications, say like they're doing presentation like you're doing right now. Will those toasts queue up when they get out of their presentation or whatever?
So what'll happen, so the question was, users get to turn off notifications, but thanks for reminding me, I don't think I did. This laptop is not used for very much, so it's only used for this. If you turn off notifications, what happens to the toast that would come in during that presentation? Well, what happened is in Windows, right now, they'll go into the Action Center. Previously, you used to get a glut of them all at once, didn't you? Did you ever find that? When you did, after you did presentations in Windows 8.1 or 8.0, and you turned out the notifications ended, you got all these toasts all of a sudden?
Yeah.
It was horrifying. Because it was almost impossible to read them all. And then when they were disappearing in 8.0 and 8.1, they were next to useless. So yeah, they go straight into Action Center now. I don't even think they pop up now when you turn off notifications. I think they just go to Action Center now. During that time, you need to go to Action Center and look at it. Any other questions? No. I know this is really dry stuff, but it is toast after all. That was a horrible joke. I really apologize. I feel bad about it.
Oh, I get it.
We need some jam on top.
Just trying to jam too much into this toast coffee.